Hello, welcome to the Sofa Surface podcast.
I just got an urge to scream.
Jesus Christ, we're in for one hell of a ride. We're here to talk about you season 4,
Me?
part 1. Yeah, fuck you.
I don't have a... Okay. Fucking hell. All right.
You dick.
But I thought you liked you.
I do like me.
Why did you say fuck you? Right. Okay, let's not get cheeky.
So, we won't talk about you season 1 to 3 that much this podcast, but
No.
how did you feel about you season 4, part 1? What do you hope to happen in part 2? Just start off with that.
In terms of season 4, part 1, I didn't like it, personally.
Ooh.
Compared to... Yeah, I know. Because usually what happens is you don't like something. And I'm like, Matt, come on, being a bit harsh here, mate. But no, I didn't like it. And the reason is the first thing I noticed was the dialogue was a bit weird.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when the guy that was dating Kate's called Malcolm, isn't he? The guy that dies first, yeah. Especially when he was talking and we learn that he's rich and he doesn't like poor people and stuff. He just says it in a way that completely isn't believable at all.
So we'll explore this point a bit. So, in my opinion, I agree with you on this point. It feels like literally all of the rich elitist people basically are all like very one-dimensional.
Yeah.
It's like there's no like depth to any of them. They're all just either evil or rich but nice.
None
Or
of them are witches, man.
can we stop, like, digging at my fucking speech impediment? Like, I can't say my fucking arse. My fucking arse.
I feel like we could just start this whole thing again, man. to be honest.
It's alright,
I
no,
feel
we'll,
like that might be
we'll
a shot.
continue. We'll continue for a minute.
Yeah.
It's your fault.
Thanks. Good. Okay.
It's you fault.
Oh. So the dialogue, Matt, of
Yeah.
the rich
So the
elitist
dialogue.
people.
Yeah. Sorry, my shoes under the fucking mug.
Oh, fucking
I got my shoes off.
okay, good. Right. So I personally didn't like the elitist characters. I didn't like the British characters mainly.
What
out
about
of those.
Phoebe?
Okay, she's interesting, but they don't do much with her character. She just gives her and her American boyfriend some relationship problems, which is that the American guy likes being pissed on by servants. That's the relationship problem that they give us. And then Phoebe has this like sex dungeon with molds of cocks as candles in this fucking place. I don't like it. It feels way too overdone, and I know that you does that a lot with the serial killing stuff and things like that. But at least with the previous seasons, it felt like the real world, and
Like it felt believable.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
And maybe with this, they didn't want it to feel like the real world because the rich and the elite are so out of touch that it's just a completely different space that he's operating in.
Yeah.
But I just find it hard to believe that any of these elite people actually think what they say. I'm finding it so hard to find it realistic, find it believable. It just ruins the immersion for me.
Especially that Gemma character.
Yeah, especially her.
Fucking hell.
She just feels like such a
Yeah.
comedic knockoff. Like I can't explain how it feels tacky. Do you know? Like it feels like there's one of that type of character in every single film and series, and it seems like with this one they've just made her so obviously unbearable by being just a person who would never exist in real life,
Yeah.
and then they kill her.
Do you think that's a performance issue or a writing issue? Considering the fact that all the other characters are basically the same. In terms of like very one-dimensional, very just one persona.
I think the issue with most of them and nearly all of them lies with the writing, especially with the lines that they gave Malcolm and stuff like that when he's describing Like when you say, oh, the poor, those peasants, we don't care about them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We're rich. That's something that a rich person would never say in that way, because they
Yeah.
wouldn't want someone who they know is from that background, like they sort of have a sense that Jonathan is. I don't think he'd ever say that, and I find it hard to believe that they would be that like over the top about it.
Yeah, I do get that point for definite. To
Yeah.
be fair, I do like some of the characters, the new characters. Like some of them are good. I think there was some good stuff with. I think it's Kate. And I enjoyed Joe, of course, but and Reese. I like Reese. I know I can't say his name, but I like Reese. Fuck you.
Yeah, fine. You like Reese, okay.
I like Reese. He's a good character, and I don't really like anybody else this season.
There are parts I like about Kate's character.
Yeah.
In terms of like her relationship with her dad. She feels almost guilty about what her dad's doing and stuff like that. Her quite fucked up relationship with Roald.
Yeah.
But her character she was so cold at the beginning,
Yeah.
and then she seems to just let Joe in, and then suddenly they're deep into this relationship.
It's very like warm sense now.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it's like it honestly, yeah, it did feel quite weird for me as
Yeah.
well. It was just quite like
And the thing is, if she was cold to everyone, that would make a bit of sense, because she's cold to everyone. She doesn't let anyone in. She's only let Joe in. But it seemed like that there were certain scenes. I think it's when she's introducing Joe at the art show or the art exhibition, where she's nice to everyone else, and then to Joe she's just completely cold. So at the start it seemed like she singled out Joe, and she was being obviously cold and a bitch towards Joe.
yeah.
And then suddenly she just warms up to him out of nowhere, and she treats him as she treats everyone else, just with sexy time. So, do you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
feels, it just feels the development was weird.
Yeah, and with Joe, there was this video that I saw on YouTube, and it was like, Joe sort of feels like what his character was like, Dan Humphrey from Gossip Girl. Like, he's in that sort of world now. Like, he's with the elitists, but he's not one of the elitists.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's trying to find this killer.
Yeah.
Or shall I say, like in Gossip Girl, he's trying to find out. Well, I mean, he is Gossip Girl, but it makes no fucking sense. But anyway,
Yeah.
they're all trying to find out who's Gossip Girl, but it has
Yeah.
that sort of premise this season in a way, like who's the killer.
Yeah.
And it just,
When we found out that this was going to be sort of like a murder mystery thing, I was really optimistic that they put a different spin on it.
yeah,
But it feels like this murder mystery has been done 1,000 times, even though it's quite different in the
Yeah.
way that they're showing it to us. It doesn't feel like they've really put their stamp on a murder mystery story.
it just feels like they needed to put a bit more work into the elitist characters to
Yeah,
make you care about them
100%.
more,
Yeah.
and make you actually like care about who's the killer.
Yeah.
Because the fact that we don't really give a fuck,
Yeah.
like who it is,
Exactly.
it sort of loses you,
Yeah.
and it makes it a very not interesting who did it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
they literally go in the show the themes of a fucking whodunit. So
Yeah.
you'd think these guys would like, or whoever's writing them, would
Yeah.
like think about ways to make this more.
Yeah, 100%. That's the main problem I have with this, is that they've got this murder mystery where the suspects, like the group of people, the pool of people that it could have been, is clear to us. We know
Yeah.
who the possible suspects are, and yet they put such little, like they put so much emphasis on who we're choosing between to be the serial killer, and yet they've put such little effort into making us interested in the characters.
Yeah.
And it just leads to a murder mystery that's quite underwhelming, because then we find out that the only character that actually had me somewhat interested, Reese, is the killer,
Yeah.
and it was just a bit frustrating.
It
for
is.
me.
It is going to be very interesting to see in part two. I think part two is going to be so much better than part one,
Yeah.
just purely for the fact
I
that
have
we're
that
going to see
feeling
more
as well,
Reese
yeah.
and Joe interactions. There was this theory on YouTube. I don't know who the creator of the video was. If so, we'll probably include it somewhere. But they made a video that talked about the fact that Reese was part of Joe's imagination. Yeah, his name's Joe. Part of Joe's imagination. So, like, he's a character that's made up in his head. And you could actually understand it. I think you'd need to watch the guy's video, but
Yeah.
it was something like Reese isn't mentioned by any of the other characters, really. And we only really see Joe's reaction to him being announced as Mayor of London.
The first time we see Reese is when Joe is drinking.
Yeah.
And when Joe is borderline drunk, sat in the middle of a party looking for someone who isn't an elitist cunt.
Yeah.
To put it lightly.
Yeah, to be fair, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the one time we see Reese. So it could well just be that Joe is some sort of insane. Reese is his conscience. He's sort of showing himself to himself. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like,
I think it would be more interesting if it was another person, because
Yeah.
we could actually see some like actual physical back and forth, like because I just think it'd be more interesting. But I do like. I also think that exploring the Joe's imagination route could be sick.
It could be quite cool, but I think I agree with you. I think I'd rather him be like an actual physical character that they can have back and forths with, and that they can develop in a different way or whatever. And,
Yeah.
it can almost become a bit of a rivalry in part two.
You know who I thought it was going to be for the Eat the Witch
See,
killer?
I might have a similar thought to you.
Is it that we thought it was going to be Ellie from season 2?
No.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was going to be the student, the 19-year-old. I forgot her name.
Nadia.
Nadia, exactly. I thought it was going to be her.
Oh.
I just had a strong feeling because she seemed... And also I thought it was a good way of her, like, teasing Joe. Of, like, giving him tips and going, oh, yeah, the first suspect is usually always the second to get killed.
Oh,
Or something
shit.
like that. And I felt like it would be so cool if she was just like...
Planning and giving him the tips subconsciously.
Exactly. And she was always one step ahead of Joe and stuff like that. And there were moments, like, I remember when they were in the class and they found out that Malcolm had died. Nadia goes and she, like... For some reason, they show her going under the table into her bag or something like that. And I don't know why this is stuck in my head. And then that's when Joe receives a text saying what the other person is saying. And there was just moments like that where I thought it could be her.
Yeah, you got a point.
But it didn't turn out to be that way, unfortunately.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be fucking Ellie.
Ellie. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been cool.
Yeah, because it shows that Joe's actions have consequences.
Yeah.
And the thing that I dislike about the season part 1 anyway the most is the fact that it's so like disconnected.
Yeah, it feels like a new thing.
It doesn't even feel like he doesn't talk about his kid in any of his monologues.
Yeah.
Not really anyway. And you'd expect him to like care.
Exactly.
Yeah. Think about it. So many big things have happened in the previous seasons. Like, you'd think, surely he'd care about Henry. He'd be thinking about past relationships. I mean, of course he is, and he's trying to like revert.
Yeah.
But like you'd think he'd mention it more.
Yeah.
And
especially with his relationship with his dad and stuff
yeah,
like that.
exactly. Like you'd think that they'd put more emphasis on the previous seasons, but it felt like they did everything, like putting Henry with a new like dads and all that. It felt like they did all that now at the end of season 3 just to have it like a complete refresh.
Yeah.
And I don't love.
I can sort of see why they've done it, because
I can see why they've done it.
It was starting to get a little bit repetitive after a while. However, I think the complete disconnect and the complete plugged out of the last few seasons is not the way to go.
What if he was in London and he took Henry with him around the world looking for Marianne. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then ended up settling down like he eventually did, and he's just been like a single dad, looking after Henry, and he's trying not to get in a relationship, even though.
Yeah. I think it would also give a bit more humanity to Joe in the sense that it gives him something to protect, because it seems
Yeah.
like he's throwing himself into these situations. Like he brought himself to the country house because he had no other things he was occupied with, and that's when all this bollocks happened towards the end of the season, stuff like that.
And also, it could have been interesting exploring that protection side, because I'm sure he wouldn't protect Henry the same way he'd protect the girls that he'd have
Exactly.
a relationship with.
Exactly, yeah.
Wouldn't that be sick to actually explore his relationship with a
Didn't
son?
even think about that. That'd be so much cooler.
Because we've only seen him like love the women in his life, sort of thing.
Yeah.
What if we got to saw him for a longer period of time loving his son?
Yeah.
Protecting just his son. Like, he doesn't have to worry about love. He ain't got to worry about any of that.
Yeah. It brings a new dynamic to his relationship with Kate.
Exactly. You know, how would she respond to him being like a single dad, knowing that her dad is like
Yeah, exactly.
a
Exactly.
dick?
It could have gone.
Now
so
you've
much
seen
deeper.
it. Now,
Yeah.
now you're thinking about it.
It could have run so much deeper, and it just feels really surface level at the minute, especially with the whodunit.
And also, it would have, if we is Joe's imagination, imagine what they could have done with Henry. You know, like he's fighting himself. You know,
Yeah. And
it's
he
like-
has to raise a
well,
man.
and
He has to raise a
he's
boy.
challenging himself on how to raise his own kid.
That would be. We need to write. We need to write the next part. Like, fucking hell. It's when we explore stuff like this with films and TV that I realise what the missed potential was.
Yeah.
And it makes me think how underwhelmed I was, because I like watching a film or a TV show and thinking I could have never come up with that. Like, I could have never come up with that ending or that way of doing things.
You know, I wanted to sort of talk about this. This is missed potential that I saw with Wakanda Forever, you know, Black Panther 2.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've told you about this, but I think it would have been absolutely sick if, like, we saw T'Challa's mother as the new Black Panther. And, like, instead of Shuri, and Shuri still be, like, a key part of it, but the mum, because, like, Angela Bassett is whipped. And, you know, I think she would bring more gravitas with her performance. Like, she was so good in Wakanda Forever. She was one of the starring spots.
Oh, I haven't watched it yet, so I have no idea. But
Sorry.
the idea of it sounds better than Shuri being Black Panther.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just also Shuri just doesn't look the part. Like, I know that she has the herbs and whatever.
I mean, she was the comedic relief in the first film.
Yeah, it just don't work,
Yeah.
in my opinion, as good as her mum being, you know.
Yeah.
And also, like, she would be very protective in her role. Like, you know, she's like the woman of the house now, like, because they've got no, like, men protecting the family. Now it's like just the women, and we can get a really good film.
Feminist.
Feminist
Ideology. There we go.
Yeah, and I honestly, it would have actually worked with the film, in my opinion, and remove Ironheart.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. So I know you haven't watched it, but Ironheart's just.
That's fine.
I mean, have you seen the CGI for Ironheart's suit?
No.
It's fucking shite,
Is it?
pal.
Yeah.
It's
Bloody hell.
fucking shit. I don't know what they've done, but they've gone backwards. Like, Iron Man in 2008 looked way, way better than the things we're getting now.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, I mean, in terms of season 4, part 2,
sorry. Going back to.
what? Just looking ahead, because I feel like we've covered part 1 quite well. Part 2, what are you hoping for? Is there anything specifically you're looking for from from part 2? Sorry.
I just want to see the conflict between Joe and Reese.
Yeah.
And that's, I want it to be heavy on that. And I also want to see him try to get back to his kid.
Yeah.
And I also want to see, we're seeing love we'll come to the conclusion of whatever this is.
This has been a fucking fever dream of an episode. Jesus fucking Lord.
So, we'll talk about predictions for you, season 4, part 2. What are your predictions? You asked mine. What are yours,
My
man?
predictions. Okay.
Like, what do you hope happens? Actually,
What do I hope happens? I hope there's some elements of Joe's past that come back up in part 2 because I don't need ad libs on this because because I just hope that we sort of end the whole you saga without getting a final comment or without revisiting or without facing the consequences of what happened in previous seasons.
Yeah.
Because it feels like he's been able to escape it pretty well. And if the consequences aren't going to be criminal or legal, then surely they've got to be mental or with his relationships where I sort of hope that he's able to reveal his past with Kate and maybe they're able to resolve it. I don't know, but how do you resolve shit with a serial killer? Do you know
To
what
be
I mean?
fair, Kate is probably one of the only ones. But then, like maybe imagine if we get to see Kate's dad and Joe interact, and
Oh,
and he starts to like see him as like his son. But it'd be
Yeah.
weird because like Kate
oh,
and
that'd be fucked.
Joe are
Yeah.
like all like dating in a way.
Yeah.
I know that obviously Joe was like, no, I don't want to be with you because I don't want to hurt you.
I think he's gonna have. I mean, maybe they end it with Joe just being better alone. Do you know what I mean? Maybe that's how they end it. But
I think his urges will get the better of him.
exactly. I don't know. It feels like it's going to be pretty hard to please everyone with whatever like resolution they come to. Because a lot of people want to see Joe not be a serial killer. A lot of people want to see Joe face the consequences of being a serial killer. And a lot of people just sort of hope that we can continue with this weird fucking fantasy where Joe can keep getting away with being a serial killer to, in his eyes, protect his partners and stuff. It's hard to please everyone.
If you do the crime, you do the time. I think it could be cool to like see him go into prison, like something like that, and then I don't know, the charges are reduced because of being with friends with power, like being friends with people who are more powerful than the system, basically.
Yeah,
and
maybe we start to see some of that, yeah.
yeah, and then we see him after experiencing prison.
Yeah.
Like, then you can continue it, but it'll be very different. But then when is like too far? When is like, exceeding the parameters of the show?
I think, seeing as though they're doing part 1 and part 2 for season 4, it feels like a good time to end it.
I'll give you this. The showrunner wants to make like a few more seasons.
Really?
I think the thing is I think it would have been cool to like see season 5 and that be where Ellie gets introduced and he's had to deal with Reese being his like emotional like side of him, like the one where his urges, get him sometimes, and then Ellie comes back from the past, starts this whole cat and mouse sort of thing, and it ends up with the ending being that Joe goes to prison. But as I said, I think that the showrunner has planned more seasons than just 5. So I don't know when that'll happen, but I do want to see Ellie come back and I think it'll be pretty big in terms of marketing as well. Like that season, whenever Ellie comes back, it'll be massive because think about it, like You is something that really kickstarted her, and then it was Wednesday, and now she's skyrocketed in popularity.
Yeah.
So it's like whatever she does is going to get attention.
Yeah,
So
100%.
if anything, I think it'd be really cool to see Ellie come back and you don't know what she's done while she's been away.
Yeah, exactly.
Like what has she had to do to get back to Joe. And get all the information and do the same,
Yeah,
stuff.
because I think if you're getting Jenna Ortega back, you need to give her a big role. She can't just be a side
Yeah.
character again or anything like that. You need to give her a big part to play in the
She
story.
she was a main role
Oh,
in that
yeah.
season,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like, you know, this time instead of just being like, oh, the neighbours like are my fuck buddy's, you know, sister.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, now it's like my nemesis in a way. Like
Yeah.
she can really counteract whatever Joe does.
Yeah.
And I think she's one of the only ones who has something over him because she knows his way of thinking from what he said to her at the end of season 2, which was like, I'm the person between you and worse people than me.
Yeah.
So like, she knows how he thinks and how he idolizes himself.
Yeah.
In that way of like protecting, and might use that against him. And I think you could do so much between them two characters. It's just when is that going to happen? Is it going to happen because of the fact that now she's so popular? But then you think You's a really popular show on
Yeah.
Netflix. I don't see why not.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
And I'm gonna say my main the thing that I think has made You so popular
thank
are
you, man.
so big.
Thank you. I am big and popular.
Big.
Okay.
I can't say. The thing that has made You so good
Yeah.
is Penn Badgley. I think he like carries the show. Like apart from Victoria Pedretti as Love, like they've really had no sort of equal in terms of acting prowess or whatever you want to call it. Like he has like been really good. Like his narrations are always quite interesting and quite ironic, and obviously the writing has lended into that.
Yeah.
But I think his voice is so like it gets you so like invested for some reason. He really plays that like inside his mind sort of thing well.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
So I think he's probably like the best part of the show.
Yeah, I've really liked his performance throughout all of the seasons. I've really enjoyed it, and even in episodes that I haven't enjoyed, I've still been interested. Like I've still watched. I've still been really intrigued. And I think part of the reason is because his performance is so captivating.
Yeah.
In all of the seasons.
True. So yeah. So you think what's going to happen in You season 4 part 2? You sort of haven't really covered it.
In terms of what I think's going to happen, I think it only makes sense that in season 4 part 2 we see. Well, I mean, from the trailer that you showed me, it seems like Joe and Reese sort of become colleagues, if you want to call them that, acquaintances. It sort of seems like they become almost
Closer.
working together, yeah, but sort of forced. Like Joe clearly doesn't want to be associated with Reese. He wants to go, well, again, for the 50 millionth time, he wants to go a different direction.
Did you notice how in the trailer? Sorry to interrupt you if I have.
No, that's fine.
Did you notice that in the trailer Reese only has scenes with Joe?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which
That's true.
Which you know complements the theory
Yeah.
that it's all in Joe's mind.
That is true. I don't think we've seen a scene in part 1 where it's Reese without Joe.
No, I don't
To my
think
recollection. So it does lend itself to that theory, and that would be quite cool. However, I do think it seems like they are trying to make Reese a physical character, and it does seem like Reese is going to be someone physical that Joe is going to have some kind of relationship with, whether it's a rivalry, whether it's someone that he's associated with and he needs to try and find a way to escape him, whether it's someone, you know, whether it's a situation where Reese is trying to almost entice and persuade Joe to be involved in things that Joe really doesn't want to be involved in. Like, it seems like they're going to have some sort of relationship where Joe is on the wrong end of it. It doesn't seem like it's going to go both ways. I think it only makes sense in this season as well that we see more about Joe's son, because it feels like it's been pretty. The coverage has been pretty bare over the first part, and it does also make more sense that Joe and Kate sort of end up going into some kind of relationship. I don't know where or how that happens. I don't know where the space for that is, especially in Joe's life, because he clearly doesn't want to. He clearly doesn't want to share that side of his life with Kate. I don't know. It seems like they're going to have some sort of playing hard to get sort of storyline.
I feel like, and I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I think part 2 is either going to be like one of the best parts of the show, or it's going to be one of the worst.
Yeah.
Like, there's no really in between, in my opinion, because they've got so many like big avenues to go down. Like, they could really do like anything, and it's like,
Yeah.
they've already made it, so like whatever reception they get, they got to deal with.
Yeah. I would say if I was predicting how good this is going to be, I think given that they've got so many big paths to go down, and they've already sort of built it up with part 1 of season 4, I think it's going to go well, because I don't see how season 4 part 1 could be so disappointing, because for me I was very disappointed by it, without it being a setup for something bigger in part 2 and something more entertaining and more interesting.
So do you think it would have been better if they just released the whole season in one?
Maybe from a standpoint of just
building up hype.
Yeah, maybe from the standpoint of building up hype, this is a really good way of doing it, because it's making people think of season 4 part 1 as almost a season in itself, and it's making people wait for what's next. You're leaving them on a cliffhanger. You're making the most, because you've essentially got 2 climaxes. You've got the last part of part 1. You've got the last part of part 2, and it intrigues people, and it's going to make the most out of both parts. But if we're talking just from a standpoint of making the best show possible, giving people a more consistent experience, and making people probably overall be satisfied more with what they're watching, because it will have some payoff. Because I was quite disappointed with part 1, and then at the end there wasn't really much payoff. I think that would have been better. But I can see why they've done it this way. It's Netflix. They like to build up hype for their shows.
Yeah.
It's why they're so successful. But I would have liked to see the whole season been released as one, because I think it would have been a more consistent experience, and I think the payoff would have been better towards the end.
Do you think it should have been like? So you think it should stay as 2 parts and no other way?
I think they probably should have. Do you mean do I think it should stay as 2 parts, or they make a part 3, or do you mean should
No,
it stay
I
as
mean
2
like.
parts, or?
Do you think it would have been better as like one whole thing, or 2?
Yeah. I think from what I enjoy from shows, I think it would be a better experience if they released it all together
Okay.
in one go.